Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands is the latest entry in the franchise and is, contrary to popular belief, not a movie tie-in. It actually goes back to the original prince from Sands of Time and takes place between Sands and the warrior within. In Forgotten Sands, you play as the titular Prince of Persia, a handsome, acrobatic warrior with a penchant for climbing just about anything and destroying anyone he comes to blows with. The prince goes to visit his brother, and in typical video game fashion, things go awry, and he's quickly dragged into an epic quest that will take him through the ruins of a kingdom in an effort to save the world. It's the sort of stuff that previous Prince of Persia games were all about, but I have to say that the storyline pales in comparison to Sands of Time, and never managed to pull me into the narrative. The plot is predictable, and the characters are forgettable, a shame given past Prince of Persia games.
You must be the one to take his place.
I do not want his power, or his kingdom.
Unfortunately, the game's visuals are all over the place. At times, the game looks pretty fantastic, with great dynamic lighting and a wide array of colors, and at other times, the game looks dull and dated. It's impressive to see a large group of enemies on screen repeatedly throughout the game, but it was less impressive when you realize they're largely just the same cloned unit over and over. The game's built on the Assassin's Creed engine, so it's a shame it couldn't look more on par with Ubisoft's other big acrobatic franchise. Still, even while the visuals may not always be the best, the voice acting is as good as ever, and the original Prince actor returns for Forgotten Sands to lend his wit and charm to the game's flagging story.
I'll keep that in mind.
While some of the presentation stuff is weak, the acrobatic platforming the franchise is known for managed to get me hooked all over again. The first couple of hours of platforming would have you thinking it's relatively easy, but it gets more difficult as the prince unlocks new powers. During the quest, the prince will eventually gain the ability to temporarily freeze water into climbable objects and make certain portions of ruins reappear as they were before they were destroyed. The game gradually ramps up the difficulty, forcing the player to combine these powers until eventually they're encountering rooms where all of them are used in epic sequences that make the game feel like a mix of platformer and rhythm action. Combining so many skills is hard, and resulted in a lot of dead princes. Thankfully, Forgotten Sands brings back the ability to rewind time, which gave me a second, and sometimes a fifth or sixth, chance of success. But this isn't the infinite retries of the last Prince of Persia game either, as this time around, players have a limited amount of retries, making failure in Forgotten Sands the perfect balance of risk and reward. There's nothing sweeter than completing a challenge without having to use any retries, or, even better, succeeding when you're on your last try. The platforming is immediately gratifying, but the combat takes some time to be a worthwhile part of the game. The earliest enemies are really boring to fight, and combating them amounts to little more than button mashing. Later though, when I had a series of power and a good mix of enemies to fight, combat became an entirely different beast. Through the course of the game, the prince will get such powers as temporary invincibility, an area effect knockdown, or even the ability to leave a trail of fire in his wake. These are really fun to mix in with the normal attacks, so much so that they make the normal combat interesting enough to actually make me want to play the game's challenge modes, wherein you fight waves of enemies in a set amount of time. Whereas the combat and acrobatic sequences of Forgotten Sands are, in many ways, like those in the fantastic Sands of Time, the story and visuals of the game are a far cry. It's too bad, really, because if the story and look of the game could have been as refined as it felt in Sands of Time, 2010's Prince of Persia could have been the game that people remembered as fondly as its predecessor. As of now, it's a lot of fun, and fans of the franchise who've been longing for a return of form to the series are in for a treat. For more info on the game, head over to IGN.com.